Have you ever poured your heart and soul into building the perfect dashboard packed with brilliant insights, only to watch it completely bomb in the boardroom? Yeah, you are not alone. Today, we're going to talk about a powerful way to turn your data from just information into actual, undeniable influence. Let's dive in. I think we've all felt this one. This quote comes from an analyst, Jennifer Park, who presented 42 perfectly crafted charts to her executive team. She had all the right data, but an hour and a half later, just silence and confusion. Her story is the perfect example of this huge gap between presenting data and actually making a decision. And believe me, this isn't some small problem. That gap creates what experts call a $127 billion opportunity gap. That's the value that just evaporates when our perfect dashboards fail to get anyone to do anything. The stakes are just incredibly high, which is why getting this right is not optional anymore. So why do these data-packed presentations so often just hit a wall? Let's get into the core of the problem, because it's probably not what you think. It's not about your data being bad. It's about the way we've all been taught to share it. Let that sink in for a second. 3 out of every 4 dashboards that you or your team builds could be failing at its one and only job to make something happen. There's a name for this. It's called dashboard resistance, and it is happening everywhere in every industry. Now look at this. This is what our brains are up against. When we see a dashboard jammed with charts and numbers like this one, we don't think great. What's the plan? No way. Instead, our brains get completely overwhelmed that cognitive load kicks in and our defense mechanisms go up. We start trying to poke holes in the data instead of looking for action. So, to get past this, we really have to understand the why. What's going on inside the head of a smart, capable executive when they look at perfectly good data and just freeze? It's not because they're being difficult. It's because of some really deep-seated human responses. It really boils down to 3 main reasons. First, that cognitive load problem we just saw. Too much information just leads to analysis paralysis. Second, there's the context vacuum. Numbers without a story are basically meaningless. And third, and this is a big one, the trust deficit. If your stakeholders can't connect the dots between the data and their own reality, they will go with their gut feeling every single time. This timeline shows it perfectly. Resistance isn't a one-time thing. It's a process. It starts out as a simple fear of change. Then in the middle, it shifts into a feeling of losing control or authority. And if you don't handle it right, it just gets worse, morphing into this ongoing skepticism and a fundamental mistrust of data itself. Okay, enough doom and gloom. We've defined the problem pretty clearly, so what's the fix? Well, the answer is to embrace what we call the narrative advantage. So what is narrative analytics? Let's be really clear. This is not about ditching your spreadsheets and making up fairy tales. It's a discipline. It's about amplifying the impact of all your hard work by tapping into human understanding. It takes all that analytical rigor and wraps it in a package our brains are actually built to consume. Right here. This is the aha moment. A dense dashboard like the one on the left only talks to the logical, analytical part of our brain. But a story lights up the whole thing. The logic centers, the emotional centers, the memory centers, everything fires at once. This means people remember it better, and the path to a decision becomes way clearer. Let's look at a real-world example to make this concrete. What do you see here? It's a classic dashboard for a personal training program. It's got every metric you could ever ask for, and that's exactly what it is. It's a report. It's just information. But now look at this. On the left, you have the report. On the right, you have a decision. It's the exact same data, but it's been reframed. It starts with an opportunity. It gives you a key insight, and it makes a crystal clear recommendation. It transforms the very same information from a confusing report into an obvious call to action. That is the power of narrative. So how do we actually do this systematically? How do we get from just building reports to crafting decisions every time? Well, that's where a really practical tool comes in. We're going to walk through the Engage framework, which is basically your step-by-step guide. It's a simple, easy-to-remember acronym, ENGAGE, Establish context, narrative arc, generate insights, address objections, guide action, and establish metrics. This is your blueprint for turning that resistance into real buy-in. So that first step E is absolutely critical. Rule number 1, never ever start with a chart. You have to start by framing the business problem. You have to explain why everyone's in the room in the first place. This gives the numbers immediate relevance, and it answers that silent question that's on everybody's mind. Why should I care? Once you set the stage, you build the narrative arc. This is where you put on your storyteller hat. You arrange your data points into a classic story structure. Here's where we were, here's the challenge we discovered, and here's the solution we recommend. It makes the information so much easier to follow, and more importantly, to remember. The first G is for generating stakeholder-specific insights. Raw data is one size fits all, but your narrative can't be. The story you tell a CFO focused on ROI has to be different from the one you tell a CMO who's thinking about market share. And the last 3 steps just lock everything in. A, for proactively addressing objections. G, for guiding the specific action steps. And the final E is for establishing the metrics that will tell you if you've succeeded. It's a complete system. When you start using this approach, it fundamentally changes your goal. You stop being someone who just presents information and you become someone who actively creates influence. This table just sums it up perfectly. Here's a little secret. Executives don't make purely rational decisions. They make emotionally satisfying decisions that they can then defend with logic. Your narrative provides the emotional framework that enables the decision. The dashboard, that's the logical support that justifies it. This is how you move from just informing people to truly influencing them. This isn't just a nice idea. The results are proven. Research from MIT Sloan found that organizations using narrative analytics make decisions 67% faster and even more impressive. The projects they approve have an 89% higher success rate. Why? Because the buy-in was baked in from the very beginning. Ultimately, your competitive edge doesn't come from having better data. Your competitors have access to all the same tools. Your real advantage comes from communicating what that data means better than anyone else. It's about combining your hard-won analytical truth with the reality of human psychology. So the frameworks are proven. The stakeholders are waiting for insights they can actually understand, trust, and act on. The only question left is, what will you do? Will you keep presenting facts to audiences whose brains are wired for stories? Or will you master the narrative approaches that transform your information into influence and turn resistance into buy-in?